If you want to become that person that sounds super articulate and sounds very smart when they speak, no need to skip any intro. I don't want to waste your time. We're gonna get right into it. First things first, expand your vocabulary. Now don't click off because it sounds like I'm gonna tell you to read a whole ass book. No, but I want to cover a huge misconception here first. It's quite common to assume that you need to know big, complicated vocabulary to sound smart, to write smart, but good writing is writing that can communicate effectively to the average individual. And if the average reader has to reread your sentence like 100 times to understand what the hell your point is, you're not a good writer. The same goes for speaking. If you're using these huge words and complicated sentence structures to sound intelligent and think that you're sounding like super smart and knowledgeable, that is completely the wrong take, because those people have to now pretend like they understood what the hell you're saying. And I feel so bad for them because now they have to quickly think about another topic before you expect them to ask you a question back about whatever the hell you just said that they have no idea what it was. So my main point is you don't need to know these big, fancy, complicated words. Like, no one even uses them usually day to day. But you need to be able to know a range of words that are replaceable, like synonyms basically, right? You don't want to just constantly say right, yeah. You want to be able to say certainly, absolutely. You got to be able to give that dimension. So my advice is not to read a whole book in 2 weeks or anything like that. That's stupid. No one's actually going to do that. Not to highlight, annotate, sticky notes, paste them on your mirror. No. That's high maintenance. I don't want to make you go through all that. But all I would say to do is to read 1 page per day of a book that you chose, of your favorite genre. It can be any book. If you want recommendations on a book that you'll definitely learn some good vocab from, I would say Sapiens is a good one. I would say Why Nations Fail is a good one. That's a little more political, historic, economic, so you actually gain a lot of knowledge from reading these books. But if you struggle with this, definitely start off with a simpler book, maybe a thriller, maybe a horror or a romance book. Just 1 page per day, especially if you're not a big reader. Tip number 2, watch a movie based around the career path that you want to get into. This will definitely help you know terminology that is linked to that career. For example, if you want to go into marketing, advertisement, maybe Emily in Paris, maybe Mad Men, just do your research. If it's something like biological, if it's something finance related, watch relevant movies or shows towards that career, and you'll just understand the lingo, the terminology that they use that you can pick up on, and just become a bit more fluent in that department. Final tip, which most people do, is if you're watching a movie, definitely have the subtitles on, because it will help you remember new words, not because you only heard it, but because you read it, you saw it, right? So that will access multiple parts of your brain and go into your long-term memory, go into your subconscious, and you're just more likely to remember that word in the long run. So the next thing I want to cover is your pace and tone when you speak. You need to become a storyteller. We are not so far from being children, and we still crave to be engaged through engaging speech. You gotta avoid sounding monotonous because people are gonna stop listening to you over time. You see, that was just horrible. If you sound like that, that's gotta go. That's gotta go, like far, far, far away. Like, you gotta become long distance with that aspect of yourself. So you need to change it up. You gotta spice it up. You gotta build up suspense by going quieter and slower, and then boom, the grand reveal, the end of your story, Keep people engaged, keep people listening towards the very end. Like, people love conversational performers. You gotta change it up for them. You have to become like a voice actor. People are there to either be educated, motivated, or entertained. So unless you're a lecturer or some kind of motivational speaker, you gotta be riding up and down that wave of tone to keep people there, to keep people listening and intrigued. Now that leads me on to body language. Body language completely affects your verbal language. It significantly complements your verbal communication. If you sound like a question mark, you're gonna be questioning yourself. You know what I mean? So tip number 1 is your posture. I read from the book, How to Talk to Anyone. The author said, your posture is your biggest success barometer. If you have a bad posture, you don't look so successful. But if you're walking up straight and tall, like you know it all, you look like you know something. Right, hand gestures. The one thing I don't like with hand gestures is when people put it up here. What are you doing? Keep your hands down here, at the hip, at the waist. When you explain things, it's mainly for you to be able to keep track of what you're talking about, because a lot of time we become distracted or we get brain fog, and we look at our hands and we kind of remember what we were talking about. At least for me, that works for me. So use your hands for yourself. Don't be drawing things out for people, you know, it's not a hologram. We're not there yet. Two more things about hand gestures is usually when you explain things, it's better if you keep your like palms up or your hands up, like it's more welcoming. And second thing is avoid this. People with arachnophobia are gonna be running away. This is the spider that lives in the corner of my room, okay? It's not your hand. I don't see a hand there. I see something that I need to be able to slam. My third tip with body language is the concept of a microphone. You know, when you're on stage, it's much easier to be able to sound smart and articulate because when you hold a mic, you feel like you're given a mic for a reason, and so whatever you have to say is important and people are there to hear you, and it's not necessarily the pressure that comes with it, it's more like you're given a pedestal for what you have to say. So things you say into the microphone are things that you've definitely thought about, are very valuable pieces of information. And it's more helpful if you're holding something like a drink near your mouth, because I feel like it just gives that extra sense of security and safety if you're holding something around you or close to you, one. And two, if you imagine you're speaking to a microphone, it will automatically make you feel like you have to be saying something of value to people, you know. And on to writing, I just have one thing to say within this mini chapter. It's journaling or just writing or diary entries, whatever it is you have to do, anything where you can write out your ideas, outline your thoughts, you know, structure things through writing. It's extra training for your brain and extra way to reflect on the words that you've learned or that you already know. And when you write, it's a different form of remembering words. Like when you're speaking, it gives you less time to think of maybe a different word, but when you write and when you constantly write, you practice using different kinds of words to express your ideas. And if you do that a lot, it does convert into your speech gradually. Now, just to make sure I touch up on the sounding smart aspect of this video, I want to say a couple things. Well, two. One, you gotta learn new things gradually. You know, you gotta learn, guys. Come on. And usually it comes from reading things, I'm not gonna lie, but that's something you already know and aren't doing, so what's the point? So I'm gonna tell you something else, okay? Tip one, watch an educational or motivational podcast. I guess the go-to would be like a TED Talk or like podcasts where there's all these interesting people coming on, sharing their life stories, sharing how they started their business, sharing like what hormones affect what things in your day-to-day, you know, all this kind of stuff that you bit by bit pick up information and are able to develop some kind of like perspective on things and be able to bring that into conversations in the future. Tip two, if you're not reading the news, at least turn your BBC notifications on or whatever news channel you follow. Turn the notifications on, be updated when huge life situations are happening. You know, don't always depend on your parents texting you about it or your friends. You gotta at least like know what the major things that are happening around you, and that like if it intrigues you, you click on it, you read the article. Like you don't have to read news every single day, you know what I mean? And three, something that I enjoy doing myself and it's quite informative at the same time, is watching debates on YouTube, whether that's Oxford University debates, whether that's left versus right debates. You know, you start understanding like what kind of person you are, who you agree or disagree with more. You do learn new terminology through watching more like academic debates, so that's great for expanding your vocab bank. And you learn new topics to be able to bring to the group, maybe some controversial, spicy ones, and that way you can also engage the audience. And that leads me on to, if you've already been there, done that with the academic intelligence, or it's just not you, you're not interested in that, consider emotional intelligence, okay? Be a deep thinking conversationalist. So if you can't bring anything academic onto the table, definitely bring your emotions and your psychology onto the table. So that entails asking the deeper questions, you know, make people feel like you're interested in them or that they're seen. Also, if you have a natural talent to psychoanalyze people, use that to your advantage in conversations. Like bring out that element of you, psychoanalyze the person you're talking with and be like, oh, I noticed you do this, but like, they have to be positive things, you know, they can't just be like, oh yeah, it looks like you're insecure because you do this. No. Be like, wow, you know how you speak about that? I realized you do that and it reminds me of blah, blah, blah. Like, I feel like when people feel analyzed in a positive way, they think that you're so detail orientated, which is also like to do with intelligence and like observation. People feel so important to you and people really remember you because you made them feel good in that moment. So I hope you enjoyed all these little tips and tricks, suggestions, whatever they are. To be honest, I don't even know at the end of the day. It's just something that I observed over time and gathered over time. I hope they helped you out. I hope it inspired you to become more engaging in a group setting and more memorable as a person. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next video.